There are just 2 days left until Republicans in South Carolina head to the polls for the next GOP primary. And once again, the issue of abortion rights is dominating the discussion. It all has to do with the Alabama State Supreme Court ruling last Friday that frozen embryos used for in vitro fertilization, or IVF, are considered children under state law. It's a ruling that could lead to people theoretically being sued or charged for destroying them. And it's an issue Democrats especially believe can help them turn out supporters this fall. Campaigning today in Michigan, Vice President Harris blamed the ruling squarely on former President Donald Trump.
One must then ask, well, okay, how did this happen? And I would say, ask who's to blame. And I'll answer that question. When you look at the fact that the previous president of the United States was clear in his intention to hand-pick 3 Supreme Court justices who would overturn the protections of Roe v. Wade, and he did it. And that's what got us to this point today.
The vice president's comments come as former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley is facing scrutiny for her response to the Alabama court ruling in 2 TV interviews. Take a listen.
Embryos to me are babies. So
even those created through IVF.
I mean, I had artificial insemination. Yeah. That's how I had my son. So when you look at, one thing is to have to save sperm or to save eggs, but when you talk about an embryo, you are talking about, to me, that's a life.
I didn't say that I agreed with the Alabama ruling. What the question that I was asked is, do I believe an embryo is a baby? I do think that if you look in the definition, an embryo is considered an unborn baby.
CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns joins us now, just back from South Carolina, of course, Nikki Haley's home state. Part of what is so intriguing about her answers there is that this has actually been sort of part of her campaign, and it seems like she may have kind of bungled it a bit.
Yeah, she did. And what's interesting here is that Haley has her own experience with fertility issues that she's been open about, especially in the context of talking about her position on abortion access. And she's tried to kind of present a nuanced view towards the issue in an effort to kind of appeal to a lot of different constituencies. But having just been in South Carolina, what's interesting about the coalition that she has been kind of building, or at least appealing to, it's not the conservative Republicans. They're already in Trump's camp. She's trying to kind of piece together a coalition of moderates, independents, and she may not want to admit this, but also Democrats. I've talked to a lot of Democrats at her events who are looking to turn the page from Trump, but also from Joe Biden, concerned about his age and their perceptions of his mental acuity. So this could kind of, as Democrats seize on it, certainly, to try to paint a broader brush here, this could kind of hurt her message. It's important to note, though, that she is down, 30 points in South Carolina. Right. There wasn't any sort of, ambition that she would win the state. But moving forward into some of these other Super Tuesday states, like Virginia, for example, it will be interesting to see kind of how that's perceived.
And more broadly, I know you've been speaking with Planned Parenthood about how they believe this Alabama ruling could now scramble politics all over the country.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this is an issue that, after Dobbs, which was over a year and a half ago, just continues to become more and more intense in terms of the way it's galvanizing voters. You don't really see that in American politics, as you know. An issue happens, and then people kind of move on. We've seen as time moves on, so too does this. So I asked, how are you going to see this play? And they believe that it is going to have a broader reach than those who are just concerned about abortion access. Take a listen. And do you think this, this focus on IVF, do you think it opened up engagement or interest from people who may not have necessarily thought about access to abortion?
I think that what we're seeing again is the connection between abortion bans throughout reproductive healthcare. There's a spectrum of reproductive healthcare, including abortion, not just pregnancy, not just IVF, not just contraception. But when you impose abortion bans in states, what you're also doing is you're making pregnancy outcomes more dangerous. You're also, extending the line into other things that people may want to build, ban, criminalize, including IVF. And you're inviting politicians into the exam room. You're inviting them into your bedroom, and you're asking, essentially allowing them to make decisions about how you create or not create a family. right? That's essentially what all of these bans are about. And I think, this IVF decision will wake up yet another constituency of folks.
And we're in an election year, certainly, so we're talking about this in terms of the presidential race, but there are a number of ballot measures in various states that she and others are obviously, and the Biden campaign focusing on, especially in Florida. Yeah,
Florida, Nevada, Maryland, Arizona. New York, other places. The hope is it'll boost turnout. We'll see. Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you as always.
Thank you.
We go now to Robert Costa, who, of course, is CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent and is on the campaign trail for us tonight in Charleston, South Carolina. Bob, part of what I think draws so much intrigue to what Haley had to say about the Alabama court ruling is how other Republicans have talked about this issue in the past, specifically IVF treatment. I want to play for you two examples of that. The former Vice President Mike Pence in a Face the Nation interview, and then the South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace.
Karen and I struggled for more than 5 years with unexplained infertility. I fully support fertility treatments, and I think they deserve the protection of the law.
I don't support any effort to take away IVF from any woman in this country, number one. And this is an issue we're going to have to talk about. We've got to talk about abortion. We've got to talk about birth control. We've got to talk about making sure we don't take away women's rights to IVF for women who are childbearing age and want to give birth to children. That is something I'm extremely passionate about. I'll be working very hard to make sure that doesn't happen.
So that's where many thought Haley's answer would fall, somewhere along the lines of what those two Republicans had to say. And it didn't. And now with 48 hours to go until South Carolina, it begs the question again of sort of why is she in this race and how much damage would an answer like that potentially do?
Ed, always good to be with you. Looking at this issue and stepping back, it's evident that in 2022, abortion rights was on the ballot across the country. And looking ahead to November 2024, it's not only going to be on the ballot, but it's really going to be driving the political debate across the country. And this is not just about the South Carolina Republican primary or former Ambassador Haley's particular stance on this issue. This is about an issue that is galvanizing conversations in homes and at kitchen tables across the country as people really think through what do they want out of this election. Maybe a different answer on the economy or on the border, but also on abortion rights. And this is an issue I keep hearing from voters. I spoke to many of them today in South Carolina, and it's evident people are paying attention to what's happening in Alabama, and they're unsettled, especially those who support abortion rights, about what this is all going to mean for those who support that position in the coming months.
48 hours to go until that primary. You did talk to some folks there today. I think we can hear from them, or you can just give us a sense of what they're telling you.
Nikki Haley is staying in this race. What do you make of that?
I think it's awesome to see a woman run. I'm actually supporting Joe Biden, but I voted for Nikki Haley because I'd like to see the Republicans have a better candidate.
So a Democrat
what we're seeing
voting, go ahead, Bob, go ahead.
Well, Ed, what we heard from voters today was that there's an acceptance that former Ambassador Haley has a real tough road ahead of her in the next few days, ahead of Saturday's primary. But there is a push among some of those who are more independent Democrats, some traditional Republicans, for her to stay in this race, even if she loses her home state of South Carolina. And I've heard from some of the top donors in the country, they would like to see her stay in through Super Tuesday in early March, because there's a belief that something could happen to Trump politically or legally. Think about this. Starting March 25th, Trump will have to be in New York City for a 6-week criminal trial over those hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels back in 2016, made by Michael Cohen. And that could be a consuming issue that, if he's convicted, will leave him a felon who's also running for president. And these unsettled dynamics in the race are prompting so many donors and some voters here in South Carolina to say to Haley, to urge her campaign publicly and privately to stay in it. And as long as the money's there, based on my conversation with Haley allies, there's a sense that she might stay in this not only until Super Tuesday in early March, but until April or May, or even until the convention.
All right, Robert Costa. No one needs an excuse to go to Charleston, South Carolina, but a primary in 48 hours is a good reason. Thank you for being with us. We'll talk to you soon.